This is draft season presented by Moody's, a proud sponsor of the New York Football Giants. I am John Schmelk, joined as always from Essentially Sports, our draft guru, Tony Pauline, coming to you from the Hackensack Bernie Health Podcast Studio. Keep getting better. Tony, we're not going to have a real NFL football game for about 6.5 months, closer to 7. It's going to be a while here. Luckily, we have a lot to fill our plate with football over the next couple of months.
Sure do. I mean, you kind of figure, what are you going to do on Sunday afternoons now? For me, for a lot of other people, we got the Olympics to keep us busy. And then when the Olympics are over, you and I will be at the Combine. And then it's Pro Day month. And then before you know it, the draft will be upon us. And I guess we'll have baseball season to kind of fill the void between then and the kickoff, the official kickoff of the 2026 season. And, of course, free agency, which is going to be interesting.
And Tony, don't forget Knicks basketball. I mean, come on. Knicks are the two seed in the East. They're rocking and rolling. Now, I like dipping into the Tony personal life a little bit here. So we're going to do that early. For the people that don't know, Tony trained to be an Olympic decathlete back in the day. I think that was the 36 Olympics, right, Tony? Is that about right?
Actually, it was when all the guys competed naked and the women weren't allowed to be there in Greece. So, yeah.
You were wearing togas? You were in the togas, yeah. So this is the Winter Olympics. It's not the summer. So what are Tony Pauline's favorite Olympic sports for the Winter Games?
Yeah, I've actually attended 2 Winter Olympics. I was in 1988 in Calgary. I was in 2002 in Salt Lake City. And the Winter Olympics are great because you get to see events that you would never see. I mean, I remember the first event I saw in 1988 was men's doubles luge. And here are these 2 guys laying on a sled coming down 80 miles an hour. And then the first event I saw in Salt Lake City when I went with my wife was the 2-man bob. And I knew what to expect. And I said to her, we went up to the track, I was like, just lean in a little bit. And the sled comes flying by 85 miles an hour. And she's like, whoa, just think about, put your head in the Merritt Parkway or some small parkways the cars are zipping by. So, I mean, luge is fun to watch, bobsled, ski jumping. If you go down on the bottom of the hill where the skiers come at you and they're coming at you at 60 miles an hour, it's insane. I like the figure skating. I like ice dancing. I like women's figure skating. I actually like cross-country skiing because I'm a runner. As you said, I train for the Olympic decathlon. I still run every day. And cross-country skiing, I mean, wow. It's tough enough to ski, but skiing up hills and things like that. The Winter Olympics, I said, again, they're fun. I like everything except curling. I mean, I don't understand curling. I guess it's the American version of cricket. I can't watch it. But again, the Winter Olympics, to me, are fun to watch on TV and to be there in person because you don't get to see that stuff normally. I remember we were there for the first 2002 was the first year they ever had skeleton, where they go head first, down on, and that's like wild watching that stuff.
Now, I'm surprised you didn't go to Lake Placid. That was the one that was like closest to us here. Why didn't you go to Lake Placid?
I mean, I was in high school. I was a kid. I would have loved to go on the Lake Placid. I don't know if anybody out there or yourself have seen that Netflix documentary Miracle on the 1980 Olympic hockey team. It's absolutely worth watching. I've probably watched it 3 or 4 times, but it talks about Lake Placid. I mean, Lake Placid is a tiny little town. I mean, the speed skating rink where Eric Heiden won 5 gold medals is right outside the high school. I was in Lake Placid years later, and I walked into the hockey rink, and it's a little rink. I mean, it's got like 1 ring of seats, and you stand there and you're like, wow, this is where the American beat the Soviet Union. And it's incredible. Why didn't I go? I mean, I was in high school. I didn't have any money to go up there and just buy tickets, plan things out.
Yeah, I didn't realize that was you were only in high school when that was. Yeah, me and my family took a vacation. I think it was the same trip that we went to see the Baseball Hall of Fame. We kind of did like an upstate New York thing, and we ended up going up to Lake Placid and we toured a lot of the facilities. They still have the bobsled track up.
Sure,
they have everything up. It's actually really cool for people that want to take a trip up there for a couple days. They have the whole thing up there. And I believe they have a Winter Olympic museum up there too, where they have like a thing on the hockey team. You're right. You're shocked, and I was only like 9 or 10 when we went, but you're shocked at how small of a town it is when you're up there.
I was dating somebody years ago, and she used to get the ski trip going every year. She was a travel agent. She had a ski trip every year. And this one year, it was at Lake Placid. We took the bus, and then, we made like a left-hand turn on this bus. and there's the ski jumps.
Yeah,
You're like,
that's cool.
wow. I mean, because ski jumps are like, look at the Empire State Building. And even, Whistler, they still use the luge and bobsled tracks as part of the World Cup. And the Whistler track, the luge track, is actually one of the fastest in the world. They hit speeds of 90 miles an hour on the luge sled going down the hill. So, and I didn't do it, but you can take rides down on the bobsled. You don't steer them yourself. You don't drive them yourself. You get in the back and some guy drives you and you go halfway down the track. But it's absolutely, if you get the opportunity just to go up there and remember, they had the Winter Olympics there twice. I think 1932 was the first year they had it at Lake Placid. So they'll never have it there again because it's not big enough. But all the history, especially with the hockey team and everything, it's worth it if you're in that area to stop by.
I mean, I think we need to start an Olympic podcast with Tony. You were throwing history out there. You were rocking and rolling. Anyway, I didn't expect that sidetrack to be so long, but that was brilliant. I love that. All right, so we do have the draft. We have the combine coming. All-Star games are in the books. Then obviously you mentioned it, free agency. Free agency is so underrated, Tony, and how it changes the entire draft picture. Because needs are such a big part of this. Teams will say, we'll just pick the best player. That's not how any of this works. And what teams do in free agency, especially in the top 10, where, Tony, my guess is when all is said and done, these boards are going to look radically different from team to team this year in terms of where they have guys placed based on how certain teams view position value, how teams view certain players. And I think need will play a big role here. So what we're going to do on today's show is talk about just who our first round grades are. Who guys that we consider, real legit first round picks. And then I think that'll inform people for what to look at the combine and what teams will kind of be thinking and debating as they move forward in this process, because I do think it's going to be very different from team to team.
The thing about free agency is it fills needs, but it also creates holes because if teams lose, you look at the Jacksonville Jaguars, who have so many defensive backs that are up for free agency. They've got their top linebacker and their top running back. So free agency works both ways. Yes, you can fill holes, but you can come out of free agency with two or three. Yes, you can you fill gaps. You can come out of free agency with 2 or 3 holes that you didn't have at the end of the regular season.
No, you're absolutely right here, Tony. And to get this started here, the reason I got up, I wanted to get my little sheet. So I have little descriptors for kind of how I have all my little spots in the draft and how I classify the players. So the way I look at first-round players, and then you can kind of give your take in terms of how you look at first-round players. This is kind of how I have it defined. I kind of work off the grading scale that Lance Zierlein uses on NFL.com, and a lot of NFL teams uses it too. So my first-round picks are classified as talented starters with above-average physical traits in almost all areas, likely a rookie starter with expectations of becoming a good NFL starter who ranks in the top 10 at his position. So that's how I look at guys that I would consider worthy of a first-round pick. Now, I do have other categories. Like I have my top 10 category, and then I have like the top 3 group, right? So the top 3 is like blue chip. Top 10s are reds, and then I have orange is my first-round guy. So that's how I classify a first-round pick, a guy that can kind of, at the very least, be a top 10 player at his position long-term.
Well, I look at it as guys that if they're not starting week 1 of their rookie career, they will be starting by November of their rookie season. That's very important to me to be a first-round pick because you want your first-round pick on the field. Gone are the days of Bill Parcells where he used to redshirt his first-round pick, have him sit on the bench, and then ease him into the system. Those days are gone. So you're drafting a guy in the first round, you expect him to play and be productive as a rookie. Improvement in their game is also important to me in the sense that I will knock a guy down if he does not show improvement between the year before he enters the draft and the year he's in the draft. I always look for improvement. We've talked about the guys from Clemson. I do have 2 guys in Clemson who got first round grades. They didn't play better in 2025 than they played in 2024, but they're really good players. So I look for guys that I expect to be starting as rookies, guys that have shown improvement, and also players that have upside. I mean, you don't want guys that are tapped out, guys that, their best football is when they enter the draft, and they're not going to get much better. You want those guys, they're going to be second contract players.
Yeah, and that's also, Tony, why people like to draft younger players, and they worry about guys that are, 24 and they're dominating a bunch of 19-year-olds. That's not what you're looking for, because you think you might be getting a finished product and not somebody that is still going to continue to improve. All right, so we're going to do this one player at a time here, because you don't. I'll do a little teaser. Not that many first round grades this year. We're not looking at, I think a couple years ago, Tony, we had like 22 or 23. Last year, I think both of us were around 19 or 20, if I remember right. This year, well, I'm not going to tell you the number, but when we get there, I think you guys would be surprised at how quickly we get to the end of this. So let's start with your top graded player. And again, this can change, folks. It's fluid. Tony and I are still finalizing grades. We have pro days, we have combine, all that stuff. But I think this is a pretty good, solid place of what we're going to look at when we get to the end of this. So the first guy on your list, Tony, is Arvell Reese out of Ohio State. And you have him listed as an inside linebacker. That's an off-ball position. I agree with you. That's how I have him graded as well. And it's just the combination of length, physicality, speed. He could do just about everything on the football field you want. And it's odd to see an off-ball inside linebacker as the top guy on a board, but I see it the same way you do.
And but he can rush the passer. And I'm glad that you say off-ball linebacker, because people are going to talk about, well, he's not valued at that position. And some people will have him graded as an edge rusher. He can rush the passer. He's a linebacker that can rush the passer. He's also a guy that played much better in 2025 than he did in 2024. He's also a guy that could be an even better player 2 or 3 years down the road. Yep. So the arrow and everything is pointing north on Arvell Reese. The size, the speed, the ability to stack against the run, the ability to play in coverage, the ability to rush the passer. Everything's there. And he's not one-dimensional. We talk about these edge rushers, and they're one-dimensional. He's a throwback. And, there was a time, Giant fans are very familiar with it, in the 80s, where that impact defensive line, that impact linebacker that can do everything, was highly coveted. In my opinion, that's what Arvell Reese is.
Arvell Reese is an inside linebacker, Tony, 6'4", 240. Right. And even though he played technically a different position, because the player I'm about to mention was an outside backer, not an inside backer, but I think the way they contribute in a lot of ways is similar. He kind of reminds me of Carl Banks a little bit. He's big, he's long, he sets the edge, he can cover, he's a smart player. Now, he's not as big as Carl was, because, no linebackers are as big as the linebackers was in the 80s, but that's the type of player. And you're right, I think he can rush the passer. I think he could be a good pass rusher. He only had 119 pass rushing snaps last year, Tony. Ohio State played 15 games. So that's like, what, 8 a game? Something like that. He just didn't do it a ton. He doesn't have like a ton of moves out there. Like when Micah Parsons came out, Tony, you saw the flashes, but he had a lot of moves, right? Last year, you had Abdul Carter. He had a ton of moves. Like when Reese rushes on the outside, you see the physical tools. He doesn't have this big bag of pass rushing tools right now that he's going to unveil. Like even like people compare it to Jalen Walker last year. Jalen Walker was far more polished of a pass rusher than what Arvell Reese is coming out this year, at least in my opinion.
And he was a lot smaller than Arvell Reese. It's funny you talk about Carl Banks and you talk about Arvell Reese with so few pass rushing snaps. The Giants didn't need Carl Banks to rush the passer because they had Lawrence Taylor. Ohio State didn't need Arvell Reese to rush the passer because they play a 4-man front. They have Kenyatta Jackson, they had Caden Curry, who was a college pass rusher, and they had Cade McDonald on the inside. But when he did, he was successful at it. So, I mean, he can rush the passer. They just didn't need him to rush the passer. And he was really outstanding in his role. He's played for 2 defensive coordinators, Jim Knowles, who was outstanding during the championship run, and then Matt Patricia. So, he's received NFL coaching in an NFL type of system. And like I said, you can knock him all you want about not having pass rush moves. He was a much better player in 2025 than he was in 2024. And I think he's going to be a better player in 2026, 2027, 2028 moving forward.
Oh, no, Tony, I'm with you. That wasn't me knocking him. That was just me making the point that
and I'm not talking about you. What I'm saying is whether it's Fernando Mendoza, people are going to look to punch holes in these guys' games moving forward, but you have to look at it in its entirety.
Yeah, correct. I'm with you absolutely right. And the reason I would just bring up the pass rush stuff, people want to grade him as an edge guy. to me, his best ball is not as an edge guy, which is the point I was trying to make. So I think just important to kind of keep an eye on that. All right, the next guy on your list, and I thought this guy might have ended up being the first guy on your list, Tony, to be honest with you, but he ends up being second, and that's Arvell Reese's teammate Caleb Downs, the do everything safety. I mean, I'm not sure what, he can cover in the slot. He can play deep. He can be a run player. He can be a single high post player. He's 6 foot, 205 pounds, not the biggest guy, but in a league now where people are looking for versatile defensive backs that can play a number of positions and just be your fix-it guy and can kind of just fix anything you need him to fix, Tony, Caleb Downs is just one of the best players in college football.
Big play safety. You remember that play in the semifinal game against Texas, which basically turned that game around when it looked like Texas was going to go into the end zone for the tying score. He made the play for a 5 or 6 yard loss on a running down. 2 plays later was a scoop and score by Jack Sawyer. He took on a bit of a different role this year because with Matt Patricia, the linebackers, Sonny Styles and Arvell Reese had bigger roles. So he was not as much a playmaker. But the thing about Caleb Downs that I love is you never see mental mistakes on the field. You never see mental lapses. He's got, as you said, he can cover, he can play the run, he's got good range, so he can be a true center fielder, but he plays smart, disciplined football, and it's been like that throughout his entire career. The only reason I have Arvell Reese rated higher is Reese had a much better 2025 season, probably because of the structure, because of what they were asked to do. Reese was asked to do more. I think Caleb Downs was asked to do, if not less, be a little bit more discipline, a little more structure. And Reese, I think, can be a little bit more impactful, which is why I have him graded slightly higher.
Yeah, Downs just didn't play as close to the line of scrimmage as much as he did last year because you mentioned the 2 linebackers, Tony, so I'm with you. I'm curious to see, what do you think the highest that Downs could go in this draft when all is said and done? What do you think his ceiling is for how high he might get picked?
2 to the Jets. I mean, you look at the Jets. Well, the Jets' defensive secondary is a mess. Okay, they need cornerbacks and they need safeties. The head coach is a former defensive back. You can, like you said, Downs is versatile. You use him as a free safety. If you play a 2 deep zone, he'll be effective there. I think he can play over the slot. So I think, considering that there's no quarterback there, considering that, Arvell Reese is an outstanding player, but guess what? As we've talked about literally since August, this is going to be a terrific off-ball linebacker draft. And I don't like drafting, something now because you're going to get something later. But the fact is, you'll be able to get a good off-ball linebacker second, third round. Jets have, how many picks? You have 2 first-round picks, a bunch of picks in day 1 and day 2. And the talented safety really falls off a cliff after Caleb Downs. So I firmly believe, Mookie had success with safeties when he was in Denver. I firmly believe that Caleb Downs is in the conversation with the Jets at number 2.
Yeah, and remember, and again, I think Downs is a better player, but the Lions had a guy named Brian Branch, Tony, who I think is similar in skill set to Caleb Downs, and I think Aaron Glenn probably does see the value in that. So I agree. I think he's certainly talented enough to go that high. I'm curious to see what people think about drafting safety, though, again, Downs can do a lot of different things that high. We'll have to wait and see. And then Tony just has all sorts of position value at the top of his draft. He's got an off-ball linebacker. He's got a safety. Then at number 3, all right, well, what else can I throw in there? Here comes the running back. Jeremiyah Love out of Notre Dame, Tony, comes in as your 3rd highest graded player. And you've really come around on him. Because I remember talking to you about him in August and in the offseason, like, he's not consistent enough. He tries to make big plays all the time. He doesn't just grind out yards. But now you have him in your top 5, and you're a big fan.
Well, 2 things. Number 1, I as far as setting up my board, I don't put a premium on position. I go by best player available. I mean, if it was a punter that was a number 4 player, I would have no problem putting a punter in the top 5 if he was one of the top 5 players. I think the positional value comes when you do a mock draft or where these guys end up in the draft. It shouldn't be on your big board. Well, I'm going to give this guy a few extra points because he's a quarterback and I'm going to knock him over the safety. As far as Love, my concern with Love last year, and look at the stats. I mean, he'd have a game where he had 150 yards, and then there was a game where there's 45 yards. So it was up and down, up and down. But when I watched him this year, he took on a bigger role. He's a versatile back. He can grind it out on the inside. He's got the speed to turn the corner. He's a terrific pass catcher. I think one of those things, one of the benefits of him, being up and down, he doesn't have a lot of carries. He doesn't have a lot of tread on the tire, which I think is something very important, as opposed to a guy that's coming out of college that has 300 to 400 carries already on the college level. Again, he's a guy, I think his best football is ahead of him. We've seen him break games wide open with that speed, but he's also a smart, consistent interior runner who basically, for the past 2 years, shared the ball at Notre Dame, but really came to prominence, I believe, last year, made the best choice entering the draft.
No, I agree with you. He's a playmaker. I think he's the best offensive weapon in this draft class, Tony. Like, if you just say, look, I want the guy that's going to be the best offensive player in this draft, I think as a playmaker, I think it's probably Jeremiyah Love. Now, does that mean he's going to be the first wide receiver, tight end, running back taken in this draft? Maybe not, because again, I think running back with position value that'll impact teams. But I'm with you. I have no argument with him being the third player on your board. Really good player, big play guy. He's got good size, can catch it. I think there's a lot to love about him. All right, your fourth guy, Tony, and it's funny, he ended up being my top edge rusher this year too, and it's not Rueben Bain. It's David Bailey out of Texas Tech. And I just think the amount of juice he has coming off the edge and the burst, his ability to bend the corner and his flexibility. He has some counter moves as well. He's violent with his hands. I think Bailey, as a pure pass rusher, is the best edge player in this draft.
The film on Bailey just blew me away. I mean, put aside his great pass rushing skill and his great pass rushing numbers. I think he had, 13 and a half sacks, 18 and a half tackles for loss. But when you watch him, people complain, well, he's not really big. Yes, but you never see him being overwhelmed by blockers. You see him hold his ground against bigger offensive tackles. You see an inside move. He's not just a wide edge rusher. He throws an inside move and gets between the guard and the tackle. He's also athletic. I mean, there are times where they use him off the line of scrimmage in space on zone blitzes. He does a good job. You see him change direction and get out to the sidelines in pursuit on running plays and run down the ball handler. The only thing that I wasn't even a red flag. He wasn't that good out of a three-point stance when I watched him. He was so much better standing over tackle as a 3-4 outside stand-up rush linebacker as opposed to coming out of a three-point stance. Maybe he'll have to learn that. The tape just blew me away on David Bailey. I got a lot more than I expected. I probably watched a half a dozen games, if not more. Obviously, we want to see what the measurements are. We want to see what the testing is at the combine. Assume he even tests at the combine. But it's going to be interesting to see how tall is he. Is he 6'3"? Is he 6'3 and a half? Is he 6'4"? What's his true weight? But the fact is you watch the film and he plays big football. He plays big, strong football. He never gets overwhelmed at the point. In fact, he will overwhelm and he will dominate the blockers, as we've seen time and time again from both sides. It's not just over the left tackle. He does it over the right tackle as well.
I'm with you. No notes. I'm with you. All right, fifth, you got Fernando Mendoza. Tony, you've talked about him a ton. Good pocket passer, accurate, gets the ball out on time. Pretty decent athlete. He's not just a stationary guy back there. Not sure he's ever going to be a top 10 quarterback in the league, but I think he'll be a solid starter.
See, I don't know, because whenever Indiana needed him, he answered the call. He was just not, look at the Seattle Seahawks on Sunday when they won the Super Bowl. It was a balanced offensive attack, run and pass. That's what Indiana was, especially through the college playoffs. They never asked Fernando Mendoza to carry that team on his shoulders because he didn't have to, because he had the running game. When they wanted Fernando Mendoza, when they needed Fernando Mendoza, he came through big time for them, not just in the college football playoffs, in the Big Ten title game, in that game against Penn State when he drove the team down the field and came up with numerous big-time third down plays, that great passing catch to Omar Cooper, which won the game. So I really think that Fernando Mendoza has got the physical skills to be that franchise-type quarterback. He just never has been asked to do it because it wasn't necessary, for the national champion Indiana Hoosiers, who went 16-0. So I think people are going to say that, well, yeah, I don't know, maybe not a franchise quarterback. He's got the size, he's got the arm strength, he can make all the passes. You mentioned the fact, he's got some elusiveness to his game. I don't know, and we spoke about this before, how those back shoulder passes are going to work consistently on the Sunday. but he seems very coachable. I mean, he went from Cal to Kurt Cignetti, who's a tough guy to coach. He's a worker. I mean, every time the guy talks, he's very impressive. You heard his comments about why he's not going to throw at the combine, why he's going to throw at pro day, because he wants to help his teammates. It's going to be good for his teammates. I think that, he's not in the realm of Trevor Lawrence the way we viewed Trevor Lawrence when Lawrence came out of Clemson. But I think with the right coaching, I think Fernando Mendoza is going to be one of the better quarterbacks in the NFL 2 or 3 years down the road.
Yeah, I don't think I'd put him in the Caleb Williams, Drake May, Jaden Daniels category either. I would kind of put him in a slot just below that. You know what I mean?
I agree with you at this point in time. Let's see what happens, because he's never, Caleb Williams basically carried USC on his shoulders, right? Jaden Daniels had some great receivers, but he was, they didn't have a big time running game. Indiana was a balanced attack, so they didn't need Fernando Mendoza to do all those things. Drake May struggled. I mean, his last year coming out of North Carolina, if you remember. I just think that we're going to hear, well, he doesn't have great upside. I tend to disagree. We won't know the answer for 2 or 3 years. But I think one of the reasons Clint Kubiak took that job in Vegas is he knows he's going to get Fernando Mendoza and be able to coach him to be an outstanding NFL quarterback.
Draft season is presented by Moody's, a proud partner of the New York Giants. Decode Russ, unlock opportunity. Learn more at Moody's.com. All right, Tony, let's go to the next guy on your list, and that's Rueben Bain out of Miami. I have him as a legitimate first-round grade as well. Yep. When I watch the tape, though, Tony, it's funny. He gets there, right, but the way he gets there doesn't blow you away. Like, he kind of just works his way back there, and I had the same issue, and I was wrong about it 100% when I watched Aiden Hutchinson rush when he came out, and it's like, things don't blow me away. I think Hutchinson's tape was significantly better than Bain's, but I think Bain's going to be a really good pro. He has an interesting size profile where he's not your traditional edge. He doesn't have long arms. He's heavier. So I'm really curious to see how this works for him when he gets to the next level. But I'm with you. Definitely a first-round pick.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, didn't have great stats, but was impactful, was constantly behind the line of scrimmage, obviously benefited from the fact that, he had Akeem Mesidor playing on the other side of the line from him. He had the kid Blay on the inside collecting blocks, so he had good teammates around him, as Aiden Hutchinson did at Michigan. You're right about the size, and the size may limit him to certain schemes, the size, the body type, as well as the arm. I'm not really all that concerned about the arms as I am the body type. Is he a guy that's going to be able to put on 10 to 15 pounds over the next 3 years and keep that same explosion, keep that same quickness? He's got to start to turn those almost getting there into sacks, into production, to warrant being a very early pick, which he's going to be. I like him as a defensive end in a four-man front. Maybe he can stand over tackle. Maybe he can eventually be a two-gap end. I mean, he's not the finished product, but he does enough things well. And again, he's a much better player in 2025 than he was in 2024.
No, I agree with you 100%. All right, let's go to your next player, Tony. This would be number 7 on your list, and that is Sonny Styles out of Ohio State. I have not finished my linebacker work yet. I'm still working on that, and I was hoping to get to Sonny before we did this podcast to conclude my final thoughts on him. But, man, I wouldn't be surprised if he's a top 5 player on my board, to be honest with you. He never misses a tackle. He's always in the right place. He's a tackling machine. He is good in coverage as a former safety. I just think there's not much not to like about Sonny Styles.
He can also blitz the quarterback. I mean, he's sort of like, if Arvell Reese is 1, Sonny Styles is 1A, in the sense that he does everything that Arvell Reese does, maybe not as impactful, but he's a terrific run defender. I like the way he moves sideline to sideline, probably better than Reese. He can rush the passer, although he wasn't asked all that much to do it because they didn't need him to do it. I think with Sonny Styles, when I really watched the film, I got more out of it than I expected. As you mentioned, the former safety gets terrific depth on his pass drops, doesn't have mental lapses, doesn't make bad plays, a la Caleb Downs, says a lot about the defensive coaching at Ohio State. And a guy who 6'4" and change, 235 pounds, will easily be able to put on another 10 to 15 pounds. He's an athletic guy. There are bloodlines there. So he's got a football background, a guy with a high upside who, again, has progressed. And I think he's scheme versatile. I think you could use him as a 3-4 outside linebacker, as a 4-3 outside linebacker. You got to shift him to the inside on occasion. He can do that. So that versatility, the athleticism, and just the general football acumen really puts it all together for Sonny Styles.
And he's physical, Tony. Like, you say former safety, and I say it too because I use it as a comment for his movement skills.
Yep.
But he's willing to take on blocks. Like, he'll attack the line. He'll take on pulling guards. Like, he is a physical player.
He defends the run incredibly well. He plays with a violent nature in the sense that, he's not cheap shotting people, but he just arrives on the scene and he is a jarring hitter in space. Not just in a crowd, in space. He'll bring the guy down at the point of attack, which is also very important because you can't have broken tackles and ball carriers picking up yards after contact.
All right, Tony, we get to our first player where we're going to have a disagreement on. I do not have the next player in as a true first-round pick for me. You have him, and I think it's funny because I think I was higher on him earlier in the year than you were. Here's where I sit with Keldric Faulk. He's your next guy. I did not think he got better from last year to this year. He looked like the same guy to me. And I just don't see the explosion from him off the line. He just sees these. I know he's a bigger guy, so you can't expect to see that David Bailey level of explosiveness, and I get that. But I never see him put offensive linemen in an uncomfortable position. And that's why I had trouble putting a first-round grade on him. I see the talent. I see the length. I see the size. I see the potential. But I couldn't quite get there on a first-round grade because I don't see that consistency, production, and again, his impact. You can see how offensive linemen set against guys that scare them. I don't see that when offensive linemen line up against Keldric Faulk.
I agree with everything you said, but coming into the season, Keldric Faulk was a top 3 player for me.
I liked him too.
And his offensive tackle, Xavier Chaplin, were at the top of my board. Chaplin was a disaster, was turned into a third-round prospect. He went back to school. I think he's playing for Florida State next season. Keldric Faulk, you look at the size, you look at the athleticism. Even scouts had him graded as a very early first-round pick coming into the year. It was a bad season at Auburn. They fired the coach. They were losing games, whether it was bad calls by the officials, whatever. I just like his size. I remember the athleticism off of my notes from the 2024 season, the way he impacted games. I think he's a scheme versatile guy. I agree with all of your criticisms of him. There's no doubt about it. I'm not going to sit here and defend it other than to say that I like the 2024 film was. It was outstanding. Obviously, there were issues at Auburn because Auburn, like Clemson, really didn't live up to expectations this year. He's a guy, you can put him at end in a 4-man front, may be able to play end in a 3-man front. Some people like him inside as an interior rusher. He's got to get back to where he was in 2024, where he was a feared guy and he was constantly behind the line of scrimmage. I agree with you. I mean, I don't want to say he's boom or bust, but there is risk of Keldric Faulk coming off the 2025 film.
Yeah, it's funny. Like 2025 didn't happen, Tony. I probably would have a first-round grade on him based on the 2024 tape, but unfortunately, 2025 didn't happen. But look, I have a round 1/2 grade on him. It's not like and it's one of my higher grades in that category. So I think he's gonna be a good player. I just couldn't quite pull the trigger on the first-round pick. All right, I'm gonna group these next 2 guys, 9 and 10, together because they play the same position. You have Spencer Fano from Utah and Francis Mauigoa from Miami. I, too, have these guys kind of almost touching, with their tags touching on terms of how I look at them. But I'm with you. I have Fano ahead of Mauigoa, and to me, the difference is that I thought Fano was just a little bit of a smoother mover. Yeah. I think Mauigoa is a little bit clunkier, and I think you see that when he has to recover. When Mauigoa gets beat and he has to recover quickly, he just can't get his body to change directions quickly enough to do that. So I like Fano's upside a little bit more just because of his athleticism and his movement skills out there at tackle.
And I have both guys at tackle. I mean, people talk about these guys playing guard. We'll see. I mean, if the arm measurements are short, obviously they'll turn into guards. But I agree with you. I mean, Fano's strong, even though he weighs less than Mauigoa, or is estimated to weigh less than Mauigoa. He's still a strong run blocker. He's quick out to the second level. He can block. He's a very athletic right tackle, and I put a premium on that. I like Mauigoa. I mean, he's big. He's also relatively athletic. I don't think he's as effective on the second level. I talked to people at the Shrine Bowl. I wrote an article about this at Essentially Sports, where a lot of people have Mauigoa ahead of Fano, and everyone I talked to said, no, they're right there. The other interesting thing that people told me is that they said neither of these guys are worth the third pick of the draft. I know we're getting away from talking about first round picks and things like that.
No, that's fine.
But no one I spoke with thought that either right tackle, either Spencer Fernando or Francis Mauigoa, are worth the third selection of the draft, which kind of tells you, how starved this draft is for offensive tackle talent. These guys are good, but they're not dominant. It may be even a situation with these guys where they're going to need some time before they're ready to step on and be consistent starters on Sunday.
All right, and this is going to be our pronunciation guy of the week. Even though fans out there see the G, it's pronounced like an N. Why? I have no idea, but it is Mauigoa. So for the fans out there, you're going to see that name on paper a lot over the next couple of months. Mauigoa, as we try to learn all the pronunciations on these guys moving forward. All right, next guy, Tony. I went back and forth on T.J. Parker out of Clemson a bunch. I had him as a first-round grade. Then I ended up sliding him down as like my first guy in the next group. I like him. I think he's a really good player. I just don't think he's going to be better than a good player. I'm not sure he's going to be a great player because he doesn't have that kind of bend and burst to turn the corner outside. But I think T.J. Parker's actually, we talked about Faulk being more of a boomer bust guy. I think T.J. Parker is a very safe pick. He's big. He's long. He'll set the edge. He's going to be a pocket crusher. He's going to be a power rusher. To me, you know what you're getting with T.J. Parker. So if you're picking him in around 15 or so in this draft, or 12 or whatever, I'm fine with that because you know you're going to get a very good football player.
I love Parker coming into the season. When I watched him at arm's length during the season and I saw the stats, I was like, wow, this is terrible. But that was the situation with the entire Clemson program. Then I watched the film, like, you know what? It wasn't because of lack of effort. This guy was not mailing it in. This guy showed a lot of ability. He showed the ability to impact games. Why the plays weren't there, I don't know. Excuse me. And then he showed a lot of the same skills during the Senior Bowl. It wasn't like he went to the Senior Bowl and mailed it in. I mean, he was getting pressure. You saw the explosion. You saw the quickness. I think it's going to be, a situation where you're either going to have a very defined one-gap system if you line him up at defensive end, a Dwight Freeney type of situation, or you're going to stand him over tackle. But he can do both, and he can rush the passer. It may just be a situation, a change in scenery, a change in coaching to get the best out of this guy. I like his upside. I like what he's shown in the past. I like the fact that he went to the Senior Bowl and he competed. He didn't mail it in, so obviously he knew what people were saying. And he can cause an impact on the front level of defense in a variety of ways, not just as a pass rusher, as a guy that can get out into space and pursue the action. People talk about pass rushers. That's great. But sometimes you got to change direction. You got to go run 10, 15 yards in backside pursuit to run down the ball handler because you got responsibilities there. You got to help set the edge. Parker does those things relatively well. It just didn't show up on the stat sheet this year. Didn't show up on the stat sheet for Rueben Bain, who everybody loves either.
No, Tony, I'm with you. I think he's going to be a good football player. I think T.J. Parker is a good player. So I don't think our opinion on him is that much different. It's just a matter of where you have him ranked. Next guy, first wide receiver, Tony, Carnell Tate. I think I'm probably going to have him a little bit higher in my first-round rankings than you. That's fine. I don't think he's a Malik Neighbors level player, the way we talked about that trio a couple years ago in the draft. But look, he's long. He's contested catches. He's a good route runner. Right. The only thing he doesn't do, and this is why I don't think he's in that Malik Neighbors type of category, he's not an elite route. He's not an elite yards after catch guy. He's not explosive with the ball in his hands. But otherwise, I think you're going to get a very safe player in Carnell Tate, where if you're an NFL team, you know exactly what he's going to give you. And you're going to get a good, well-coached wide receiver coming out of Ohio State.
As we've seen in the past. I think the explosion isn't just running after the catch. You watch Carnell Tate, he basically plays to one speed. He doesn't have a burst. He doesn't have great quickness, but he is a phenomenal receiver. I mean,
and he's fast enough to get over the top, though. He will run past people.
He's sneaky fast, but it's all one speed. He's not.
No, I agree with that.
He is just an incredible pass catcher. Tracks the ball in the air. Great focus and concentration. Great timing. Knows when to high point the ball, when to get up and come away with the contested grab. He plays like a big guy. I want to see what his actual measurements are. I think last year at Junior Timing Day, he was 6'3", 195 pounds, but he plays like a 210-pound receiver. He'll get up in a crowd. He'll take a pounding. He'll come down with the ball. The focus and concentration is incredible. Had a good quarterback throwing on the ball. Had a good teammate on the other side. But even going back to 2024 in the playoffs, I mean, he was coming up during important moments of the games, making big receptions for Ohio State. He did that last year as well. As you state, in the deep field, in the end zone, as well as the short field. People may knock him because he's probably not going to run in the 4.3s. He is just, as far as I'm concerned, he is an NFL-ready receiver that I would be surprised if he's not starting week one and not productive early in his NFL career.
100% agree. All right, your next guy, Tony, Peter Woods. This is another guy that had right below the threshold. And, when I looked at Woods' tape, unlike Faulk, when I watched Faulk, I was more impressed with the raw physical tools, I think, with Woods than I was with Faulk. But then you look at the overall consistency and production, you're like, well, why didn't you just win more? Like, you look at it, it's like, why aren't you beating these guys more frequently? So that's why I couldn't get him quite into the first round. But, man, you see the physical talent with this guy. You will not find a defensive tackle with many more tools than Peter Woods.
That's why they used him in the offensive backfield on occasion, right? That's why they used him as a blocker. They'd hand him the ball, and he'd run the ball because he is an outstanding athlete, and he's explosive, and he's a gap penetrator, not the biggest guy. He's more of a quick, explosive guy as opposed to a power guy. Yeah. He's not going to bull rush offensive linemen off the ball. He's a four-man front. Basically, I say one gap tackle, but he's better than a four-man front. If you're going to use him in a three-man front, you probably can. But it's a situation where your linebacker's up at the line of scrimmage. So it's a three-man front that's basically a one-gap type system, if you will. The athleticism is incredible. I mean, he's explosive off the snap with a great first step. Yeah. He plays with great pad level. He uses his hands well. I agree with you. I mean, it's like TJ Parker. It's like most of Clemson players. Where was the production? Again, when you watch the film, it's not due to lack of effort. I wish he would have gone to the Senior Bowl or post-game All-Star game, as his teammate did. I think what Parker is, he was good in 2024. He showed a lot of those flashes in 2025. The upside is there. It's just a matter of coaching that upside out of him and saying, listen, you got to play up to your level of ability every single down. We saw his teammate, DeMontre Capehart, at the Shrine Bowl. It's the same thing with DeMontre Capehart, who's going to be a late round pick, a 6th, 7th round pick. The skill is there. It's just, you got to get it out of them. And the one thing that these guys all have in common is they play for Clemson, which has been an underperforming program. So you have to, or at least I take that into consideration.
Yeah, I thought the quickness of you mentioned it with Woods, Tony, like just his twitchiness, his ability to move side to side and change directions as a big guy, really impressive. Your final first-round pick, and I have a couple of guys that I'll throw in that I had on my list, and they're close on yours. Jordyn Tyson, wide receiver out of Arizona State. I think what impressed me about him, Tony, and I had to double-check the numbers, and I'm curious to see what he measures when he goes and measures at the combine. He's a guy that looks like a small receiver when you see how he plays, but he actually measures as a pretty big receiver. I think 6'2", 205, right? Is that what he measured in or something like that? So, for me, he has a lot of twitchiness. He's a good route runner. He catches the ball. He has an injury history, which is what pushes him down a little bit for me, I think for you as well. But I do think he has a chance to be a very good wide receiver.
He's a lot like Carnell Tate. I mean, he's not going to blow past people. He's not a true vertical wideout. He's just an incredible receiver. I mean, he's a natural pass catcher. Runs good routes. If you watch the film, opponents were keying on him, yet he still come away with the ball. Knows how to come back to the football, which is important rather than waiting for the pass to get to him. Consistent hand catcher, which is something that you look at like Carnell Tate, extends his hands and makes the reception away from him rather than letting the football get into him, which leads to a lot of drops. I mean, there's a lot of things to like about his game. The ability to separate through his routes, the ability to focus, the concentration. The injury history, which goes back to 2024, is a big concern, especially for a guy that's a taller, thinner type of wideout that doesn't have that vertical speed. It'll be interesting. That's why I don't think, people think he's going to be a top 10 pick. I don't see it with Jordyn Tyson. I don't see it the way he stacks up on my board. It's like Corey Davis. You remember when Corey Davis was selected with the 5th pick of the draft? I mean, similar to that. He's got a lot of skill. He could be a really good receiver. Could he be a number 1 wideout in the NFL? Yes, in the right system. I like him. I just don't love him.
All right, there's only one defensive player, Tony, that I had as a top 10, and you do not, or first-round pick, rather, and you do not, and that's Mansoor Delane. No. I rewatched him again this morning. He just doesn't allow guys to catch the ball. Yeah. And we'll see what he tests and he measures that, and I know that's going to be a big deal. But simply working off the tape, Tony, he looks like the best cornerback in this class to me. He looks like a first-round corner to me. So until I see those measurements and I see how he, tests and all that stuff, I'm going to have a first-round grade on the guy. I thought he just played phenomenal football this year. He's the next guy on your list. He's literally the next man up. So I know you like him as well, but yeah. I decided to kind of put him over the barrier there just because he played so well this year.
And, he was a good player going back to his days at Virginia Tech. I noticed him as a sophomore, at Virginia Tech. That's when he first jumped on my screen and then on my board. And then what happens the following year, people just stopped throwing the ball in his direction.
Yeah.
And I agree with you. I mean, he was good in man. He was good in zone. He's good with his back to the ball. He's good facing the action. Let's see. I mean, for a guy to be an early first-round pick at cornerback for me, I like to see him to be 6 foot tall. I'd like to see him run in the 4.4s. I hope Delane does the latter, runs in the 4.4s. I don't know that he's going to be 6 foot tall. I like Delane, but the measurements, the way I know of them right now, or what I'm being told, basically pushes him down not out of the first round, but out of having a solid first round grade.
No, and I think that's fair because testing a corner is very important. All right. One other guy I have in there, and he's very close for you as well. He is the 4th guy off your list. I have Mekhi Lemon with a first-round grade, Tony. Yeah. And what impressed me when I watched him, and I didn't coming into the year, I thought he was kind of a second-round slot guy. Man, his run after the catch, for a guy that weighs, I think he weighed 185 or whatever he measured. I think that's what the number was. I don't have it in front of me. He was great breaking tackles and running after the catch, man. Like, he's just, I think he can play outside a little bit. I think he'll be primarily a slot guy in the pros, which I know you don't draft a slot guy with the first-round pick. I get that. I understand. But I do think he can play outside. But his physicality and just ability with the ball in his hands really stood out to me.
A lot like Jordan Addison. Not really big, not super fast, but explosive.
Yeah.
You talk about physicality. He's very confident. I mean, he wants the football.
Yep.
He competes for the football. Love his route running, the way he separates through his routes. Again, fundamentally sound, catching the ball, doesn't let the pass get inside him, consistently extends his hands and looks the ball in, immediately turns it upfield. I love the way he competes. I love the way, he wants the ball. He wants to be the man. Again, for me, I want a first-round receiver to be at that 6 foot level. If they're not at the 6 foot level, if they're 5'10", 5'11", they better run in the 4.3s, which is why I think he's going to be a good receiver. I think he's going to be a top 20 pick, a top 25 pick at least. But that's why I don't have a solid first-round grade on him.
No, I think that's fair. And this is a guy that you're higher on now than he was at the start of the year. He's moved up your list here, Tony. And it's funny. I went through his tape late last week, and I got through the first half of the year, and I'm like, how are people talking about this guy as a first-round pick? Yep. He catches all his passes at the line of scrimmage. I don't see a lot as a route runner, and I was very unimpressed. Then the second half of the year, and I'm like, all right, now I'm starting to see something. He's running routes, getting separation, getting downfield, and he's a willing blocker. So I put Kenyon Sadiq over the edge for me, only because I saw a lot of improvement from him in the second half of the year, and I see how that arrow really is pointing up, and I see the potential as a real, true two-way tight end in the National Football League with the athleticism of an F tight end. So that got me a little excited.
I completely agree with you. And you said it right, the athleticism. And the athleticism basically is shown in his pass catching in the way he lays out for difficult receptions. It's not he's a guy who can adjust. I've seen him extend to make a lot of tough catches. He gives effort blocking, needs some improvement there, but it's not due to lack of effort. It's just a matter of, how soon is, remember the Smith song, how soon is now, how soon before he reaches his upside potential are you willing to wait? I agree with you. I mean, I watched the film with Sadiq, and I got a lot more out of him than I expected, especially later in the season, especially making difficult receptions. And they didn't have a great receiving core there. Dante Moore didn't have a lot of weapons to throw to, a lot of impactful weapons, and it was Sadiq all the time. I agree with you. A little bit of a younger guy. The upside is there. It's just a matter of when are you going to roll the dice and take him in the first round.
Yep, I'm with you. All right, and then the final guy that I gave a first-round grade to, I just watched him this morning, Tony, and I was really impressed. He doesn't get beaten pass protection, and he is a mauler in the run game, and I'm going to try not to butcher the last name here. So this is part 2 of our Learn How to Pronounce Names part of today's show. The Penn State guard, Vega Ioane, I believe that is correct, Ioane. I just think, Tony, he's a really, really safe player. I'm not sure he's going to be a superstar. And I know then you're going to say, well, John, why you put a first-round grade on him? But I just think he's going to be a really good run blocker. And I watched the Ohio State game specifically because we all know how good that interior Ohio State defensive line is. And Ioane dominated them. They didn't sniff anything in that Penn State-Ohio State game as much as Ohio State took it to Penn State in that game. It wasn't because of that. So I was really impressed with that tape. So I have him as kind of like my last true first-round grade.
I don't know if you know this, but he was at the Players Hotel, the Shrine Bowl, because he's training.
I did not.
Dallas. I got to speak with him and Drew Shelton for a little bit, and they're interesting guys. Listen, he's not going to be a good run blocker in the NFL. He's going to be a great run blocker. Right. He's got an NFL build. He bends his knees. He's a leverage blocker. He's powerful. The only thing is, I don't think he moves well enough to be in a zone type system. So I think that he's not a bad mover. He's not a top mover. I think that limits him to the type of systems and the type of availability for him and the versatility, which is why I don't have a first round grade on him. Have you done Emmanuel Pregnon yet of Oregon?
I have not.
You let me know when you can. Do Pregnon and compare Pregnon to Ioane and let me know what you think, because I watched Pregnon when I did my Oregon film. I was blown away by him. Absolutely blown away by him. So I'm going to be interested what you think about Pregnon compared to the Penn State guard. I have the Penn State guard rated higher.
Yep.
But I think the spread between the two is not as much as a lot of people think.
All right, just a couple of names I want to mention, Tony. Jermon McCoy, much like you, I have him just outside with the first-round grade, and it's just the questions of how healthy he is and what he looks like after the ACL. If I knew he was healthy and if I saw what he did in 2024, even with just like 3 or 4 games of 2025, I'd have a first-round pick on him, but the injury just made me a little bit queasy about it.
If he played half of 2025 the way he played in 2024, he's the first cornerback. He's the highest rated cornerback, and he's a potential top 10 pick. There's no doubt about it. I mean,
I agree.
He's a guy who he shows speed. What I liked about him is the physicality and the ability to make plays with his back to the ball. I mean, Delane is good with his back to the ball. He's good in zone. McCoy was constantly making plays downfield with his back to the ball, getting his head back around, tracking the pass in the air, and defending the throw. So, I agree with you, but he's missed an entire season. You don't know how he's going to return. The injury history is a question, which probably means why Harry Roseman, the Philadelphia Eagles, will take him the first round and turn him into a star.
Yeah, or either the Eagles or the Cowboys, right? The Cowboys love taking those injured guys too, and then they, whether it was Jalen Smith from Notre Dame or whatever. Last year they picked the corner, the tall kid out of the small school.
Right. Yeah. The only thing is, you have filled up, but Harry Roseman takes Landon Dickerson, takes John Campbell, and they turn into pre-injury players, and they're dominant.
The Eagles are a lot better at it. Don't get me wrong. You're absolutely right. Draft season is presented by Moody's, a proud part of the New York Giants, uniting the brightest minds that turn today's risk into tomorrow's opportunities. Learn more at Moody's.com. Tony and I will be back with another show next week. Then we're going to have our Combine preview air probably that Monday of Combine week, and then we'll do a Combine recap the following week. So we'll huddle up. We'll figure out what next week's show is going to look like. Tony, any final thoughts?
No, I mean, it's ironic because just get off the Super Bowl, everybody's all excited. Now there's kind of a lull in the action, right? Because there's not much going on. You got to wait to the combine. The draft board is updated at Essentially Sports, so check that out. Starting to get the scouting reports in there, so that'll be a lot of fun. But I'm sure John and I will figure something out for next week.
Yes, we will. And by the way, I should give me your summary, Tony. You had 15 guys with first round grades. I had 14.
14. I had
14. Oh, you had 14, then I had 13. I had one fewer than you did. So give me your summary of what this group of first round grades look like as a unit.
The summary is this, unless you have the first pick of the draft and you have the opportunity to draft Fernando Mendoza, it's not good. It's not a good year, not a good draft to be at the top because there is no exceptional talent. There's no franchise type players, no generational talent. When I did my board, it's actually very deep in the sense that I have gotten more guys with draftable grades than there are draft picks. And I think that's because you're seeing a lot of the 6th and 7th year seniors start to filter out. I think there's going to be a lot of depth in different areas starting in late first round, really through the third round. And really the board shouldn't change all that much unless somebody throws a clunker in at the combine and, Carnell Tate can't run under 4.55 or something like that. They're really you shouldn't go into before the combine with 14 first round grades and come out of the combine with 20 first round grades. It doesn't work like that.
All right. And then finally, Tony, let's see something positive about this group because I do think you have some very good players at positions where you're not getting really good players at those positions early in the draft.
That's it. And I talked about this elsewhere. Look at Carson Schlesinger this year. Okay, Carson Schlesinger was a dominant defensive off-ball linebacker who teams were thinking about late in the first round. He was taken with the first pick of the second round. Wouldn't you love to have a Carson Schlesinger on your team, on your defense, leading your defense, in the middle of your defense? And like you said, people say, well, Arvell Reese, off-ball linebacker, not traditional, Caleb Downs. But you get a guy like that in the middle of your defense, that can control the game, that can lead the defense, that is constantly making plays. There's great value to that. And you're absolutely right. I mean, it's not a traditional year where you have got cornerbacks or left tackles or great pass rushers at the top. But still, I mean, whether it's Caleb Downs, whether it's Arvell Reese, whether, you go Sonny Styles.
Yeah.
These guys are not your traditional, you're not going to see a lot of highlight reels because they're making plays behind the line of scrimmage, but they do a necessary job and they do it exceptionally well.
Tony, we'll talk to you next week.
Look forward to it, John.
For Tony Pauline, I'm John Schmelk. Thanks for joining us on Draft Season, presented by Moody's. Coming to you from the Giants Podcast Studio, presented by Hackensack Meridian Health. Keep getting better. We'll see you next week.